guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video I'm going to be talking about some of the weird things people say and do about my disability. Now I'm doing this because Scope are doing the #EndTheAwkward campaign for a third year running, and this year I'm part of it again for the second year in a row. For those of you who don't know what the End the Awkward campaign is, it's basically a campaign that Scope are running to end social awkwardness around disability in a fun and engaging way. So this year I'm part of the campaign again, and I filmed with the company Unilad, and we filmed a comedy sketch which was inspired by a real life incident in which someone talked to my guide dog and gave them directions as opposed to myself. Last year I filmed some videos talking about disability and my awkward moments and about how to not be awkward around disability, which I'll link below if you're interested. But I wanted to do something again this year for the #EndTheAwkward campaign, and I decided that I would talk about some of the weird things people say and do about my disability. Now I want to say, like I do with every video that I talk about disability like this, I don't mean to offend anybody, I don't mean to insult anyone, I don't want to make anyone feel negative about themselves or awkward if they've said anything like this before to someone with a disability. I'm just doing this to raise awareness of disability and to have a little bit of fun. And really the End the Awkward campaign is not to make people feel bad about themselves, it's to just say, look, life is full of awkward moments, disability doesn't need to be one of them, it doesn't need to be awkward, and you don't need to feel awkward around disability, so just calm down, chill out, and just try again, and just realise what you said was awkward and just move on from that situation. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, and I'm going to be talking about some of the weirdest things people have said to me about my disability, and hopefully you guys find this funny. For those of you who don't know about my disability, or for those of you who are new to my channel, let me just explain what my disability is. So I have septal-optic dysplasia, which is a congenital condition, and it affects my endocrine system and my eyesight, amongst other things. I did a video about it a while back, I'll link it below. And I am registered as severely sight impaired. I'm blind in my right eye and I've only got a limited amount of vision in my left eye. I've got only central vision, I have nystagmus, I work with a guide dog or a cane sometimes, mostly my guide dog. I use visual aids, I use assistive technology. But my sight loss is the most prevalent thing that you see about my disability, although my disability is also invisible. It's the sight loss that mainly comes up into conversation, because obviously I walk around with a guide dog or a cane, so that is the thing people immediately see and recognise about my disability, although it is also invisible too. One of the most weirdest things I find people say about my disability is they express the need to try and cure me, or that they want to cure me, and they'll say things like, isn't there anything they can do for you? Can't you have laser eye surgery? Can't you wear contact lenses? Can't you have this operation? Can't you go and have this treatment done? Wouldn't this help you? Even right down to, won't glasses help? To me, it seems like people don't know what to talk about, and they want to try and make me feel better about my disability, so they're trying to list everything they can think of that would possibly cure my disability. And then once I say no, there isn't no cure for my disability, it's just how it is, they will then pat me on the shoulder and say, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure one day they'll think of something though, because science is improving every day. They'll think of something eventually. And then more often than not, I'll say to them, well, actually, I'm quite happy with my disability and who I am. I don't want to be cured of it. I'm quite happy to live as I am. And then they'll look at me like I'm strange, and they'll be like, oh, really? They look at me as if I don't know what I'm saying, or I clearly don't have a conception about my disability, and that I must be abnormal to want to live with my disability. That's how I feel people treat me. And I just think people need to understand that disability doesn't always have to be cured. It can't always be cured. There's not a cure for everything in life, but also not everybody who has a disability wants to be cured of it. Of course there are people who do, and that is absolutely fine, and that's down to their personal preference and how they feel as a person. Of course it is. But then there are those people who may say, actually, you know what, my disability does affect me, but I'm quite happy to live with it. And that's, again, down to their personal preference and how they feel as a person. And I'm one of those people who says, look, my disability is what it is, and I'm quite happy to be as I am. Another thing I find weird that people say about my disability is they'll look at me in the way I dress. Obviously, I'm a fashion blogger, I'm a beauty blogger, I'm an enthusiast about style and looking good and feeling good. I love skincare, I like painting my nails, I like having my hair done, having my eyebrows threaded, etc, etc. And people will look at me, or I'll be on a bus doing my own thing, and they'll start up a conversation about my visual impairment. Well, how old's your guide dog? Is your guide dog yours? Are you training the guide dog? Oh no, really? What, you're visually impaired? Yes, I'm visually impaired. And then they'll say, oh really? Oh, you're dressed well considering, or like, oh, you look really nice considering, or you look really confident, you look really good considering. It's that you look really good, or you look, insert whatever phrase they use, considering. Like, considering what? Considering that I have a disability. Oh, but you look good even though you have a disability. Like, what am I supposed to look like? Am I supposed to walk out of the house with a big, massive brown bag over my head? What am I supposed to look like? What am I supposed to act like or be like as a person? It's not even just a sight loss thing. I know people from different areas of the disability community who get this too. People in wheelchairs, people who are amputees, people who are deaf, so on and so forth. It's not even just a case of it being down to sight loss. People seem to think that disability in general means you can't look good, you can't dress well, you can't present yourself in a normal, and I use normal in inverted commas, a normal manner, and you can't be an everyday person. And are you looking good? And I just find that really strange how people say to me, but you look so good, considering. And it's like, considering word at the end of it that really bugs me, that considering I have a disability, I'm not supposed to look good. No, that's completely wrong. Another thing that I find very weird that people say about my disability is they will list every single person that they know with that same disability to me. So for example, I was once in a cab and I was on my way to university, and this particular cab driver, for that entire 45-minute journey, he listed every single person that he knew about, he had known, he had met, his friends had known about, etc, etc, who had a visual impairment. It also comes down to the idea that people think that just because you have a disability, that's all you can possibly talk about, or that's all you have in you, that's all you want to talk about is your disability. And that's not true. I want to talk about lots of different things, not just my disability. That gets really, really boring. If I talked about just my sight loss on an everyday basis, I would become incredibly bored very quickly. You wouldn't list every single person you knew who was a nurse, for example, if a person was a nurse, or every single person you knew who was Chinese. So it's the same thing. Why would you list every person you know with a disability just because that person happens to have a disability? And I just don't understand why people do that. And then to add to that, this same cab driver, although he was very nice and very helpful and a very lovely person, I'm not disputing that, he wasn't doing it in a malicious way, he then went on to say, do I know any of these people? I get this a lot. People will say, oh, I know this person with a visual impairment and they live up in Manchester, or they live up in Scotland or Birmingham or wherever else, and they'll say, oh, do you know this person? Even though I'm a blogger and I'm very well connected and I know lots of people from the disability community because of my campaigning work and my blogging work, I'm not going to know every single person with a disability just because they happen to have a disability. I find this a lot. People say, oh, I dated this person and they were blind. Maybe you know them. Just because we both have a disability, we're not going to know each other. I find that a lot too, and it's an add-on usually that they'll list every single person and then they'll ask, maybe you know them, or do you know them? If you're someone out and about and you happen to meet someone with a disability and you don't know what to talk about anything, the weather, talk about your holiday plans, talk about politics, talk about the news, talk about fashion, just talk about anything other than disability. I mean, it's okay to bring it up into some situations, and if you want to ask someone a question because you want to give them help and you need to get more information to know how to help them, that's fine. But after you've asked the question, don't feel that you have to continuously talk about disability the whole entire conversation. Another thing I hear quite a lot, I think this is very prescriptive to me and my disability, and also other guide dog owners in particular, is that I hear people say, is that an actual guide dog? Like, is that a real guide dog? I hear that so much of the time. Yes, she's wearing a fluorescent yellow harness. She has a sticker on it that says guide dogs. It has the Guide Dogs for the Blind logo on it. Clearly this is the branding of a guide dog, and a guide dog that's working. So I find it strange when people can say, is that a real guide dog? As if that I'm going to go on eBay and find a harness and I'm going to make it look like a guide dog's harness, and I'm going to go out just for the benefit that I want to use a dog that looks like a guide dog. Like, of course it's a real guide dog. And I don't know whether it's people that don't believe that I'm actually am visually impaired and they want to suggest that I'm faking it and that my guide dog's not an actual guide dog. Like, I'll walk into a shop with a friend and we'll be going to get some makeup or something, and then I'll get a security guard tailing me and he'll say, is that an actual guide dog? Was that a real guide dog? And I'm just absolutely flabbergasted, because clearly these people must have to have disability awareness training, and they must have to recognise what guide dog and assistance dogs are. So why would they say that? Why would they say, is that an actual guide dog? Who ever heard of a fake guide dog? I mean, have you? Because I haven't. Another thing that I get a lot, which I've mentioned so many times on my channel, I'm not going to talk about it too much because I have made a whole entire video just on this subject, and it is, you don't look blind. And it still shocks me to this day because I still hear it all the time, and I just don't understand what they mean. It's such an enigma. What am I supposed to look like? What is anybody who is registered as partially sighted or blind or visually impaired have to look like? What is the idea in their head? What is this idea of blindness or sight loss that's floating around in that head of theirs to make them say, you don't look blind? I get this so much and I still don't understand it to this day, and I still find it incredibly weird and incredibly frustrating that people can say that. But then they'll continue with that and they'll say, oh, but take it as a compliment. And then I say, how is that a compliment? How is saying something which is othering to the 2 million people in the UK alone living with sight loss, let alone the entire world, how is that a compliment? Because you're othering them by saying you don't look blind, but other people look a certain way because they can't see, and it's very negative, it's very derogatory. Because you're saying that I don't look blind, it's a compliment, then for it to be a compliment, it must be an insult to everybody else. Do you see the logic in that? Another weird thing that I get a lot with my disability is people believing that I'm faking it, that I'm faking that I can't see, or that I have a disability, or that I have an illness, and they get me to prove it a lot of the time. So for example, I will say to them, I can't see very well, I'm visually impaired, after they've asked me about my guide dog. Usually a lot of this conversation comes up because they see the guide dog, they look at me, they say you don't look blind, or she can't be visually impaired, look at her. And then they'll ask me, are you visually impaired? And I'll say, yes I am. And then they'll say, but you don't look it. And then they'll say to me, oh, how many fingers am I holding up? That is so incredibly frustrating. I just find this so incredibly weird that people will just think that it's okay to do something like that just because I happen to have a visual impairment. Like, you wouldn't say that to any random person walking the street who didn't have a visual impairment. You know, you wouldn't challenge them. But suddenly, because I've got a guide dog or a long cane and I look a certain way, it gives them license to do that. And I just find it so incredibly frustrating. So many of my friends who are visually impaired get this all the time too. And I've also heard stories where people in wheelchairs or wheelchair users, they might be able to walk short distances, and then people will say, oh, but you don't need a wheelchair then, you're faking it. Or they'll say, but how can you be a wheelchair user when you can walk? So it's a similar kind of thing. Just because we might have some sight left, or just because our disability doesn't appear how it always does, doesn't necessarily mean that we are lying about it. Disability can fluctuate, an illness can fluctuate. It doesn't always stay the same. Like, my sight loss deteriorates in the dark. I go completely blind in the dark. But in the daytime, I can read, I can see things, I am able to see things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it will stay the same all the time. And then people will ask me, why do you need a guide dog then if you have vision during the day? And I will then say to them, well, it's because I can't see things like curbs or branches of trees or anything because I've only got central vision remaining. A lot of the time they understand and they'll say, oh, okay, I get that, and then they'll carry on. But it's that whole thing of having to explain 101 things just to be able to get on with my day and for people to validate that I have a disability. Now, I don't mind answering questions about my disability. I'm fine with it. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to give people insight. I'm happy to give them information so that they can go out into the world and have a better understanding of disability so that it won't happen again and they won't feel awkward about disability. I'm more than happy to do that. But there are those days when people will just ask me so many questions about my disability. They'll get me to prove that I have a disability. They'll ask me so many questions, and it just makes me feel very, very, very negative about myself, and I don't want to be made to feel like that. And there are those days when I don't feel in the mood to have to go through the same script that I have to go through so many times of the day about my disability, and to validate it to somebody is very frustrating. And that's really what I want to say to someone. It's just having to explain your disability all the time can get very, very tiresome. But so many of us have to do it on a regular basis. We have to try and validate ourselves, or prove that we have a disability to people, whether that be on social media. Disability isn't black and white. It isn't always clear. It isn't always something you can immediately see. There are many grey areas of disability, but that doesn't make it any less valid or real. I've just discussed a handful of things that I find people say that are weird about my disability. These things are just a few. I could talk about a lot more, but I'm sure you guys have plenty more to add. So I want to open the discussion to you guys now. Comment down below with things that people say to you about your disability that you find very odd or very strange or very weird. Let me know in the comments. Please be mindful to people when you comment as well, because this is a public forum, a public space. It's talking about disability, which is a very personal topic. So please be mindful to other people's opinions and feelings when you're commenting too. Thank you all so much everybody for watching my video today. Don't forget to check out the #EndTheAwkward campaign and my video I did with Unilad. I'll link everything down below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!